This episode of the Beauty Industry Podcast was brought to you by Private Label Skincare. Hello and welcome to the Beauty Industry Podcast, your online support community for the professional beauty industry. I am your host, founding director of Beauty Industry, Tamara Reid. Here, we are closing the competitive gap and speaking your language. This is a platform created and dedicated to the professional beauty industry, valuing community over competition. We serve to help connect you with inspiration from industry experts, expand your knowledge through educational pieces, and bring you the latest in product and technology innovation. This is Beauty Industry. Today, my guest is Dr. Davin Lim from Cutis Clinic. I am sure Dr. Davin Lim has graced your social media feed by now with his down-to-earth educational YouTube videos on treatments and skincare, all the way through to his Instagram Skin School or his Doggone Sunday featuring his Jack Russell Terriers. But for those who don't know, Dr. Davin Lim is a specialist certified dermatologist who is trained in cosmetic and laser surgery and aesthetics. Dr. Davin is ranked in the top 1% of cosmetic specialists worldwide as voted by his patients and his peers, and in 2015 and 16 he was also placed in the RealSelf.com's top 100. Dr. Davin Lim's work is a self-proclaimed fusion of art and science. His treatments are individualized and bespoke, designed to rejuvenate and enhance his patient's appearance to create a natural-looking result and a patient's best self. He believes that every journey, whether it be one treatment or a series, should always start by gaining an absolute understanding of what the patient wants to achieve. Davin's sterling reputation is perfectly mixed with a fun and relaxed attitude that makes Dr. Davin truly world-class and a really fun person to interview today, which you'll hear. From Cutis Clinic, here's Dr. Davin Lim and I for Beauty Industry. Dr. Davin Lim, welcome to the Beauty Industry Podcast.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for joining me. We were just chatting briefly offline about lockdown and freedoms for some of us, you particularly up in sunny Queensland and me down in now Melbourne in the lockdown. How has the last couple of years treated you firstly?
Oh, yes. I mean, apart from COVID, but yeah, don't get me started because Queensland is relatively free from COVID, but we're moving very slow when it comes to vaccination. So we can see the arena, not only in New South Wales and Victoria, but the rest of the world, including Israel and Singapore. And we're moving at a snail's pace. But sooner or later, we're going to open up and then the proverbial will hit the fan. So yeah, just waiting.
Exciting times ahead. Hey, we start all of our podcast episodes, not actually on the topic of lockdown, but on the topic of how you entered your profession. And so I'd love to kind of revisit that with you. How and when did you get started in aesthetics?
You would not believe this, but just yesterday marked the 20th year I traveled. So I left, believe it or not, September 11th, 2001 for my training in Ireland, in overseas. As a dermatology registrar. So I was mid-flight when 9/11 hit. So
oh my goodness.
That's why I do not forget that day. Because I mean, everyone remembers where they are, but this was like a mid-flight. So as I exited the flight was to Dublin, and I had a stopover in Singapore. And then when I stopped over in Singapore, the flight was halted because at that stage, the FDA in the US banned all flights, which meant Ireland banned inbound flights as well. So I was stuck in Singapore for 4 days. So that's when my dermatology career began.
Oh my goodness. Wow. That is such a crazy story.
I know. And it was just yesterday, I was just going, man, it's been 20 years to the day. It's just like 2 days ago. Yeah. But just 20 years to the day from when I actually packed my bags, went to Ireland. So I did my dermatology training there for nearly 2 years as a registrar. Then I came back to Australia for a year. Then I went back to the UK for a year. Then I finished off in Australia. And then from there, I went to the US. So I learned surgical in the US, and some of my laser accreditation in countries like Malaysia and Singapore. That way, I mean, I don't regret traveling all around the world. I think it makes you a more rounded dermatologist, a more rounded doctor, because we get to see skin diseases and how the healthcare system works in each different country. So if anyone whinges that Australia really sucks, wait till they go to the NHS, and then the people at NHS don't realise sometimes they're pretty lucky as well. So I think I've got a balanced view, or I would like to think I've got a balanced view of the healthcare systems throughout the world. So
well traveled is pretty amazing. And look, to be stuck in Singapore's one of my favorite places. So you got pretty lucky there. It could be worse.
yeah. I mean, Singapore. Just aside, I mean, the dermatology there is fantastic. I used to go there for lectures, and I still lecture there. But it's it's a good place to be, and the standard of practice there is very, very high. So I'm very fortunate because in the context of dermatology, after I finished, I had some really, really cool and really good guidance from a lot of mentors like Greg Goodman, Phil Becker. They've been instrumental in how I train and how I actually approach the field of dermatology. These guys never stop learning, so being mentored by them and just following them and the thought processes, the publications and all, you're kind of lucky that way. So I'm very fortunate to have these guys at that moment in their career where they can make such a big influence on someone as junior as me.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. Do you like when people come to you, and I mean, do you even have people ask you to mentor them now, given your kind of success in your career?
yes. So I do. Yeah, every week. In the last couple of weeks, I've had a dermatology colleague come by. I've got one tomorrow. I had one last week. So I think it's whatever goes around. So I think it's good to to pass on the skill sets and pass on the knowledge. Pay it forward as well. So
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
and having colleagues there, it's so it's like fresh air, because you get someone to bounce ideas back and forth, and it is very refreshing.
And mentors are much more accessible these days through the likes of social media. I mean, you're pretty, loud on social media and definitely kind of a lot more proactive. But it's so easy for people to slide into the DMs and say, "Hey," and just quickly ask this question than it used to be trying to find a mentor and formally kind of apply with them. Hey.
No, absolutely. I guess it's both, a pro and a con as well, because there's a lot of crap out in social media,
Mm.
and it's hard to, I guess I would say on Instagram, on social media, everyone's a frigging expert.
Yes.
You've got Google, so you've got your computer in front of you, and whatever piece of information, whether it is trivial or what have you, someone's going to find it and go, "I'm an expert." So it's great in that way where I guess this exposure, but then also you've got to take everything with a little bit of a grain of salt, especially in social media.
Absolutely, absolutely. In terms of your Instagram and YouTube, I have done a little bit of stalking, and the way that you explain things is super, super simple for anyone to be able to understand, but very informative at the same time. And you kind of go on that gray area between like B2C talking to a client and also B2B talking to professionals. There are a lot of professionals who want to do the talking, but they're super shy, perhaps introverted. How do you approach those videos, and how do you go about keeping it light and informative, but still getting that relative information for a client to understand?
Yeah, I guess the main thing is when you do a video. That's why I say when you do a video, when you go out there to talk, whether it be the lecture circuit, webinar, even doing a post on Instagram, what I think makes this good for the profession is that, generally speaking, if you're confident enough to do that, generally speaking, you probably want to do some background research on the topic. So that makes you a better overall clinician. So if I'm going to talk, for example, on acne medication and this new retinoid, I've got to bloody well read up on it, because I'll be shot down if I say the wrong thing. Yeah. I mean, it can be good in a way where that is forever. I mean, when you talk about CPD points, forever in a day, you're continually developing your professional curriculum. Because every day you've got to dig out the journal articles, you got to do some research. When you do that, I guess it gives you a little bit of confidence, right? And confidence to put, I guess, pen to paper or type something out or talk about something. When that happens and you go, wow, there's people are listening. It might take, I mean, for me, when it came to YouTube, literally I did, I don't know, maybe about a dozen videos, and the growth was in certain areas were good, but then some were not that great. And then you think, I've spent so much bloody time doing this and no one's listening. But then, it's just a drop in that pond, and then that ripple hits. And then at 6 months, just, oh, geez, people are actually listening to me. And same with the Instagram. It's just exactly the same thing. You might do post after post and you think, well, no one's really paying attention. They may not be, but you put good content out there and people can decipher what's good and what's not. And then over time you build a following. So I think it's just one of those things, persistence and confidence. And the only way you're going to do that is just to get the content out there. Like, you got to be disciplined enough to try to do a good piece of content every day. And if you're really motivated, probably a video a week if you can. But that takes a lot of work. Yeah. But at the end of the day, I think it's really good for personal development.
Yeah, absolutely. You're just putting yourself out there, aren't you? And as you said, I think it's very imperative that people do know what they're talking about before jumping on, because people will come for you, and people aren't afraid to say, actually, that's wrong, or I believe it's this instead.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and you will be, I mean, I get shot down every day, but then when I look at the comments, it's like, okay. So it's almost bulletproof now. So.
Yeah, absolutely. So take me back to your career. We were talking about before your love for travel and the fact that you did travel quite a lot. And in fact, you were one of the first Australians to be trained under the Irish Association of Dermatologists.
Yeah.
Do you think that the first, yeah. Do you think that it's going to hinder dermatology, people who are studying at the moment because they can't study? Of course they're saying because they can't travel.
Yeah, I mean, with dermatology, in fact, look, they just had their exit exams just last week. So last Sunday, they had their exit exams, and it's never the same as having a real life meeting. Having just the clinical stuff that's gold. Besides, when you travel and you meet people, look, I guess there's two ways I see things. This COVID thing is a blessing in disguise when it comes to consuming knowledge. So I know this sounds pathological, but every night at around 2 to 3 a.m., I watch the MCAS videos or a lecture from a webinar. So every night I'm watching some lecture. Now, this is all because of COVID, right? And if it's not for COVID, we would be traditionally practicing the same way, going to meetings. The downside about going to meetings is that if you're in a really shit lecture and you sit down for the first lecture and you've got 3 hours ahead of you, especially if you're near the front, it is downright rude to actually get up and leave. So basically, you got to go through 3 hours. And during that time, you may absorb only, I don't know, maybe 15 minutes of good content, but you've wasted 3 hours or 2 hours, 45 minutes and stuff which may not pertain to your, I guess, needs, or maybe the lecture is not, to the standards of what you perceive that they should be. Fast forward to COVID days, and now we've got webinars and we can fast forward. I mean, you usually can tell within the first 1 or 2 minutes whether the lecture is going to be good. So what I'm saying is that now, because of COVID, I'm binge watching lectures. It's almost like binge watching Netflix, but it's almost like a sponge where every night you're basically soaking up new information from all the other webinars and all the other meetings in the world. And pre-COVID, this does not happen. It's just traditional. You go to a lecture, you mingle. Certainly the social aspect is very important because you're making connections. The other thing as well about remembering, and this is kind of important, is if you try to have some kind of emotive background and associate that particular point or that particular lecture, you tend to remember it a lot more. So certainly, if you go to a really good lecture, the ambience, the atmosphere, the feel, you tend to remember things a lot more compared to, let's say, a webinar. So there's pros and cons, but now with COVID, I think it's double-edged. Yeah, we get to see a lot more stuff around the world, absorb a lot more, go to many different meetings in just virtually one night. But the flip side, you don't have the emotion then, you don't have the connections, which I think are very important when it comes to real live meetings. Yeah.
Very true. Very well put. As you said that, I was thinking of all the hotels I've gone to watch conferences, and you always remember that hotel smell. They've all got their own individual smell, and that takes you back to another memory of another conference.
Yeah, or even the food. That's what I say. Yeah, the food's very important.
All the conference food.
Yes.
After the break, Dr. Davin speaks to success and challenging what we know through advancing our knowledge. But first, a word from today's beauty partner. Community, are you looking for a skincare solution for your salon? I bet lots of you are nodding yes, because that's one of the most highly requested questions that we get in our beauty industry Facebook community. Well, how about this? Why not create your own? With private label skincare, you can have a salon range that not only supports your visions and dreams, but also your business financially too. It's easier than you think, and with a range that is natural, vegan, cruelty-free, and contains all of your favorite high-performance actives, it's a great way to show your support through your salon, retail, and professional products. We'd love to show you just how easy it is by downloading the Skincare for Salons course, which you can receive for free right now by entering the code BEAUTY at the checkout at privatelabelskincare.com.au. That is a free downloadable course just for you to learn all about creating your own skincare range. So how cool is that? Thank you so much to the team at Private Label Skincare for making this episode of the Beauty Industry Podcast possible. And now, back to Davin. So talk to me about then the lead up in creation to Cutis Clinic. How did that come about?
Oh, Cutis is basically, as you know, that's Latin for skin. So I was the founding dude for Westside Derm, which was the previous clinic. Look, I think with derm, there's often an overlap between medical and procedural, right? But what I perceive is that the medical side of things, and where we build our core knowledge, our core skill sets, you have this crossover of patients where you just want to delineate, you just want to draw the line and go, okay, this is cosmetic elective, and this is medical. So on one hand, the medical, you've got your psoriatic patients, your eczema, people who carry lots of staph, and that ideally should be seen at another clinic. The only reason, it's purely infection risk control. So it used to freak me out when we used to have atopics there. So people with bad dermatitis who we know are staph carriers, and they're in the same waiting room using the same toilets as your fully ablative or laser resurfacing patients, which essentially, a third degree thermal burn. And it always used to freak me out, because there's cross-contamination. So that's why I've actually had Cutis as Cutis Aesthetics and Cutis Medical. And that way we can separate things a little.
Yeah. Okay, interesting. I've never thought about that before.
The ambience is a little bit different. I like the medical side of things. So my forte is not the consulting room. My forte is in the theater. So whether it be injecting, lasing, peeling, that's my that's what I really like.
Yes. And so you have actually developed several new delivery protocols for cosmetic procedures, like your TCA cross and your hybrid laser resurfacing. How have those changes come about, and what kind of differences are professionals and also clients seeing with, these types of changes and developments in the industry?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where if you're caught in the same pattern, like for example, TCA cross, I just published a paper in Derm Surge, one of the journals, and we've been doing this. Well, I've been doing the same thing day in, day out for 5 years. This was from 2005, 2006 to 2011. and you do the same thing, just go, it's in the journal, everyone's doing it this way. Hey, you know what? There must be a better delivery system. And it's serendipity, you come across something and go, wow, this works a lot better. And then you do that, and then you do that and go, hey, this is the bomb. And then next thing you know, you're doing it for bloody 10 years. And then it's taken me literally nearly a decade to go, hey, maybe that delivery system, which I kind of invented like 10 years ago, really sucked. How about we try a different technique? And you just go, wow, that's really good. And then you start using that. So I think it's just one of those things where we understand what's in the journal articles. We understand what's being taught. But sometimes, you've got to take that little time out to question stuff and just go, well, is this the best way we can do it? And then think outside the box. Sometimes when you're in a busy practice and you're doing I wouldn't say mundane, but yeah, it is. I mean, when it comes to procedural, all your work should be mundane, because the last thing you want to do, come into, for example, if you're having surgery in your gallbladder and you have an excited gallbladder surgeon going, oh, cool, this is really good. I read something in the literature. This is my first time doing it. You want someone who just go, this is boring as batshit. I've done this 1,000 times. The more mundane you are, the more confidence that, generally speaking, you've done this a lot before. And when you're super busy as well, you fall in that general pattern of just doing things because it's automatic pilot. So sometimes I think, like, for example, the COVID thing, pre-COVID, a good probably at least one third of my patients, between 30 to 40%, came from either overseas or interstate. So you can imagine what happens. Even now, it's like my list, instead of going from, my procedural list, instead of going from 3-4 months, now they're at probably about 6 to 8 weeks. It's purely because now I'm servicing the Queenslanders, really, rather than interstate and international. So to get back to that, is that when you slow down a bit and you just go, it's not much, you just have to slow down 10%, and you just question yourself and go, hey, I read this in this article, or I heard this in this lecture. What happens if I apply this to this? And then think about stuff. And then from there, you basically just go, wow, there must be a better way of doing things. Yeah. So it's just the last 1 year where I could start writing a lot of these up in journals and undergo publication now. So it's once again, it's just serendipity. From a bad situation like COVID, you change it to a good situation and just go, wow, you can not reinvent the wheel, but there's a more proficient way of doing things.
Yeah, it's that silver lining. Hey, and I completely agree with you. As therapists and estheticians, even our conversations, are sometimes just so robotic and so repetitive. Yes. And I think a lot of the time, when product companies or manufacturers train us in a device, we don't think of anything else. We don't really ask the what if questions or go down the rabbit hole. We kind of take that advice as just gospel and then we just do. So I really like how you've got that curious mind, but I'm wondering, when does your mind stop? Because you're studying all these things, you're doing all of these treatments, you're thinking what if, you're doing the Instagram. I mean, do you ever hit pause?
Yeah, it's funny because I just came back from a run. Actually, I went for an 8K run just then, and it's funny because just in the last couple of weeks or last couple of months, I'm just thinking, man, I'm kind of fanatical. I need to know more. So I'm bloody listening to a podcast while I'm running.
Oh my goodness.
and then I'm thinking, as I'm running, I'm thinking, man, I've got an extra 45 minutes, 1 hour. And I'm thinking, that's so cool. Now I can absorb, maybe even if I absorb 20% of that podcast, it's still pretty good. So, but just as long as you're enjoying it, I think it's fine. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a fine line. Hey. So tell me then, in your clinic, are you a more is more kind of person, or do you think sometimes we just got to strip it back and go to the basics?
Yeah, I'm less is more. When my patients know it, my nurses know it. I dermal fillers, neurotoxin, all that. I'm more of a small unit kind of person, and I don't like the add-ons. So, for example, like laser resurfacing or just doing a procedure. A lot of people will know when I quote, would you like to upsize that? Because in America, a
Mhm.
lot of the stuff is like upsizing. It's almost like going to Macca's and they go, would you like a large fries and large Coke with that? So you have a procedure, for example, just give you an example, for example, microneedling or laser
Mm.
resurfacing. They'll go, oh, would you like PRP? It's just like,
Yeah,
yeah.
right.
And if PRP makes a difference, for example, people know that I'm against PRP in the context, only in the context of skin rejuvenation, not in the context of, for example, hair,
Mm.
because I think the evidence for that is much more robust compared to, for example, dark circles or
Mm.
reju. And same with fat transfer. Yeah. I do fat transfer, but I don't like the nano fat transfer. It's just that sort of stuff where I try not to complicate things. It gets hard because when when I get patients from the US, they're expecting all that. They go, oh, what?
Mm.
You're only going to subsize and just going to laser resist? They go, yeah. They go, aren't you going to use like 2 or 3 different lasers? I'm going to go, well, there's no need to. I'm just going to use one. I'll get to the base of the scar.
Mm.
Aren't you going to use PRP? Because my previous dermatologist used PRP. No, not really. I don't think it works. So it's like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and it's just that. It's just that, yeah, where you just go, oh, it's hard, yeah, because once again, it boils down to social media because when they see a lot of this from other clinics, they expect that, hey, you know what, this is done everywhere else. Why aren't you offering it?
Mm.
So then when you're asking about, am I, more is more, I'm less is more, but well, I know that sometimes that even though you want to educate people that way and go, this less is more, they have that feeling that it's not enough. And once
Mm.
again, all because of social media, because other people are doing it.
Yes. And they see that combination, layer,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
go, oh, okay, well, you're only going to do this. Maybe they feel kind of like a half treatment, even though
Yeah,
it might
half
be the
treatment,
best
exactly.
solution for them.
Exactly. Like for example, I know a lot of my colleagues in the US when they go for a rejuve or scar rejuvenation or scar treatment modality, they'll add everything from the pre, and a lot of patients don't need it. They might add things like, for example, your tyrosinase inhibitors or your basically bleaching agents beforehand, right? Or maybe
Mm.
even add a chemical peel beforehand. Um, and then their basis is like, oh yeah, we're going to keep your melanocytes nice and quiet. This is why we're going to do it. In theory, yes, but in practicality, often it's not needed.
Mm.
And then you're going to have this pre-peel. We're going to use some tretinoin. It does matter when you, for example, trying to enhance the activity of your second agent. For example, if you Jesna's TCA, you want to enhance the TCA, you use a Jesna. If you want them to heal a little bit quicker or have an absorption that's a little bit better when you're using low concentration, for example, TCA, you might want to use retinoids for the week or two preceding. Stuff like that makes sense. But it does not make sense when you're asking them or when you're going through a procedure where I'm going to take the entire bloody epidermis off right down to the mid-dermal layer. And then you ask them to use a peeling agent to help with that bloody stratum corneum. I mean, it just does not make sense where you just go, I'm going to compact the stratum corneum. I'm going to see whether we can get some better penetration. It does not matter. And it's true. It doesn't, you're going to take the whole bloody epidermis off anyway. So stuff
Yeah.
like that, and then after that, there'll be the all the shit and glitter, yeah, the PRP, your oxygen facials, your oxygen infusions, and then after that, your peptides, your copper peptides, all the kind of BS stuff that people read about and go, oh shit, this is really good. And the worst are probably stem cells. It's just,
Right.
and I always, before I bag something out, I always want to try it. So that's why sometimes it's good to understand the limitations of something before you just go, this is bullshit.
Totally. Would you ever consider starting your own range of skincare, or you think there's enough out there?
I'm starting now. I'm ashamed to
Oh.
say, but no. I think it's hard because I think when you're going to be ethical and you market skincare or you've got to do it from a clinical point of view. Yeah. And we know, and I'm sure there's only a handful of things which work, and a lot of the other stuff is either borderline or bullshit. Um, and
Mm.
as your ABCs, your alpha hydroxy acids, your salicylic acid, your antioxidants, the CE ferulic acid, and all the other botanicals, and your tyrosinase inhibitors, whether it be hydroquinone, your arbutin, your licorice, all that sort of stuff.
Mm.
We know we can count them all in on, fingers and toes. That's it. Yeah.
Mm.
And that market is very saturated. And when you think about big companies like SkinCeuticals, L'Oreal, Dermatology, they've got a huge amount of experience and limitless budget.
Mm.
If you're going to go for formulations that work and also formulations which feel nice, you're going up against these companies, right? And as a dermatologist, a lot of the stuff that I'm used to are pretty scrum stuff. Yeah, like for example, my TCA concentration, my chemical, I start at 30%, right? That's my starting point, and I go up to 100%. Most of the days I'm using between 80 to 100%. My minimum is Jesna TCA. My minimum concentration of retinoic acid is between 2 to 5%. So, and even the stuff like tyrosine inhibitors, my minimum is 5% hydroquinone. I do go up to 10% cautiously and for intermittent periods. So all of this sort of stuff is, it's pretty scary stuff. Yeah. And then my AHAs, even when I'm using AHAs myself, I'll be using a 20% with a 2% BHA and then layering a retinoid on top of that. But once again, it's calculated stuff. So I'm not a cowboy and give that to anyone. But so when it comes to skincare, I find it really, really, really difficult to pare down that and just go, okay, cool. I've got to work with the lowest common denominator and go, who's this person who's going to go for a bloody scrub, use their beta hydroxy acids, then layer their alpha hydroxy acids and their ascorbic acid and then their retinol, and then come up with this rip-roaring rash of irritant dermatitis.
Yes.
Yeah. So I have to work with that and then pare it down and go, and it took me, I'm a bit, I guess, slow in this regard because of our core training, when we use skincare or do skincare actives, it's with purpose, right? It's when we prescribe something like 10% salicylic acid, it's there to basically act as a exfoliant and treat your solar keratoses or decrease your keratin buildup. So it's all with purpose. And in derm school, derm teaching, plus with all my mentors, there's never the fluffy shit associated with the feel-good factor of skincare. And I know in this industry, it's probably 95% feel good. And what the brand represents, something cool like Drunk Elephant, for example, with some fuzzy, cruelty. And I'm saying cruelty free. I mean, cruelty free. I'm all for that. But the cruelty free /vegan /clean skin, earth skin type stuff. It's what they represent. And I have a problem with that because if I look at my true ethos and what I represent the, let's get shit done type. Yeah. And that's with powerful chemicals. So
power we have.
So I find it very difficult. Yeah. Very, very difficult.
Yeah, interesting. You almost need a title that just like rip your face off in a bottle. Let's get shit done.
Yeah, well, see, you could, but then that's dangerous. Yes.
It's all about what the marketing says, isn't it?
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
So I'm interested to know, what are some challenging times you've had over your career? Obviously, COVID is one of them. I'm sure, as you said, your wait list has gone from 3 months down to 6 weeks, which, has both pros and cons, but obviously nobody likes to decrease in business. Any other challenging times that you found?
Look, I think it's hard to say, because the most challenge I probably have is trying to figure out what you like in your career. I like the clinical side of things. I'll be first to admit I don't like business. I hate business. I hate talking about money. A lot of the times I make really, really, really bad financial decisions, but I understand why. For example, when it comes to lasers and understanding that, sometimes I would go into a laser purchase. So I still, on occasion, buy lasers. Most of the time now I get given stuff, but still I do buy stuff, and I buy stuff that may cost $250,000, knowing that it just does not make financial sense. and my accountants will just go, Davin, why are you, are you like stupid or what? I mean, this is just the return of investment isn't there. I have to do that because I have to, it's a stupid, it just does not add up. It's a silly way of understanding technology by going, it's okay. It's not that great. I've just wasted this much money. But then I can go on a podium or I can go on on a lecture circuit and sit there in front of a panel and just go and talk intelligently about that device because I've used it, I've maximized the use, I've tried it, not just delegated it. And yeah, I think that's the most challenging bit is to actually understand your limitations, and I'll still continue to do so. I think for the rest of my life, knowing sometimes my financial decisions are not in the best interest of my accountant, but I still do so because I think that makes you more a rounded person when it comes to panel discussions.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it gives you that validity because you've tried it, you've used it, you've got that knowledge behind you, and now you can speak from experience rather than just going, oh, I saw the before and afters and I read the white papers and this is my experience.
So I try to get hands on the new technology and try to understand it. So and part of that is, I guess, the part of the challenge is finding that time where you just go, well, because as you know, new devices come out literally every couple of months. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So even then you've got to go, well, will this suit my mode of practice, and then elect to either use it or not use it.
Yeah, totally. When you're mentoring people or just chatting to people in general about their career and their kind of pathway, is there any one theme of advice that you stick to that you'd love our audience to know?
Yeah, I think it's extremely important to stick to or find a career pathway that suits you. Yeah, and I tell that to all the junior doctors who come in and they go, I want to do dermatology, but also I want to do something else like cardiology, or I want to do geriatric medicine. It's like you've got to pick what your strengths are and what you really like. For example, my dad was a psychiatrist. He's retired now. It's polar opposite compared to what I do. His is all abstract. Yes, certainly you do see, gestures and you can read people that way from their movements and all, but his is abstract. It's about talking. Yeah. And for me, everything's visual. There's very little in the way of, it is important certainly when it comes to certain conditions, but in the most part, everything's visual. You make your assessment visually. So that suits my personality. I like plastics, but the problem being is that my concentration span and my maximum operation time is probably about an hour, which means, when it comes to go to breast recons and all that, this doesn't suit my personality. But I'm always hands-on. So, either plastics. And at first it was eyes. I was going, oh, cool. Then I figured out I've got this problem being so intimate with people, literally you're 2 centimeters eyeball to eyeball, and they go, maybe if you have a problem with that, maybe ophthalmology isn't for you. So I made that decision early.
All righty then. So focus in on being a specialist in something and try not to be a generalist in everything.
Yeah, absolutely. And try to find out your personality. If you like, if you like doing stuff, certainly something procedural would be really cool. And I did toy with orthopedics, and I like, it's much like carpentry. I like the woodwork associated with orthopedics, but generally speaking, it's, for example, if you're a knee surgeon, there's only a certain way amount of techniques you can employ to do a knee, and your technology, apart from newer arthroscopes and better titanium screws, which is very exciting, I guess, for an orthopedic surgeon, stuff like that. The technology doesn't evolve anywhere near something like, for example, skin, whether it be devices or injectables or what have you. So if you've got a short concentration span, or if you like to constantly like your professional life to be evolving, that's probably one of them. My mentor Greg Goodman said to me one time years ago, he said, "Oh, you know what, Dav, you got to reinvent yourself every 10 years," and I think that's true. I can see his career going from something like surgery to lasers to injectables, and same with me. I think it's just that as we evolve professionally, it might take 5 years, might take 10 years. We go, oh, we wouldn't say conquered it, but we go, oh, cool, we understand that. What else is there to learn? So initially, the skincare stuff for me, as a procedural derm, was not that important because as derms, like I said, we use very different chemicals, and the chemicals we use are very strong. But then I think it's very important. That's why I read a lot nowadays in the context of skincare. In fact, just then I messaged Michelle Wong, Lab Muffin, and I asked her. She's a good source because if a new ingredient comes out, I always ask her. I say, "Hey, Michelle, is this good?" She's very, very good when it comes to analyzing papers and all. So that saves me a lot of, bullshit reading, because that to me saves time, and which means I can absorb some other material. And then she says, "Oh, this is really good." Then I go, "Cool, I'm going to read up all about it and do my homework." So it's good to have buddies like that. And I met her basically through social media, and Caroline Hirons as well. These people are gold, and if there's, especially with Michelle, because she's so smart when it comes to chemicals. And we bounce ideas off each other. She goes, "Oh yeah, what do you think of this? Is there any clinical indications for that?" So that we do a lot of podcasts and a lot of webinars together. I think having colleagues in that space is very important, because you don't get it. I don't get it right all the time. Sometimes I might think, "Oh wow, this is really good." But then I miss certain papers, or I may not read as in depth as what she does. So I think from a derm point of view, our strengths are our clinical acumen. Yeah, but then when it comes to our formulations and our real science, we do all the scientific background stuff, but then that's not our daily work. We kind of do that in our primaries, and we study that, but then we kind of forget that. But we know what happens when chemicals hit skin. So that's our forte.
Yeah, totally. Oh, I love that so much. And I love the collaboration. That's what we're all about here at Beauté, and this industry can be very, very isolating. So it's nice to hear that even the likes of people like yourself, dermatologists who we would look at and go, well, they know it all, you're still cross-referencing with other people in the industry, which is very
100%. Cool. I mean, I know the traditional stuff, but even cutting edge stuff where you go, oh yeah. And the good thing is that when we see, a chemical or being applied to skin, we see what it does and we can understand that. But I don't have that knowledge to go, the chemistry side of things is that, the stability of this, or how is this chemical created? How stable is it from a different pH? That I think is probably the cosmetic formulators, the cosmetic scientists. They have a much deeper knowledge compared to what I have in that context. And I don't pretend to even have anywhere near that knowledge. But then, things like, for example, parabens and fragrance, we see the clinical side of that, as in the, allergic contact dermatitis, what it looks like when shit hits the fan when it comes to, paraben allergy or fragrance allergy. And then we go back to the books and go, cool, where are these chemicals found? And then give the patient information based on that. So we're very good at, the detective work with that. And we're very good at extinguishing the fire. So that's our forte with that.
Amazing. Davin, thank you so much for coming and having a chat with me today. I really appreciate all of your time and all of your honesty, as you always are. And we'll point people to all of your Instagram, as I'm sure they are already following. But if they're not, they can go and find you and follow up on some more of those cool videos.
Cheers. Hey, thank you very much for having me on board. Yeah, really appreciate it.
Likewise.
Okay, cheers. Bye.
Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode. Isn't Dr. Davin an absolute rock star? Getting off that conversation, I felt like I needed to be 100% more productive than I have been, because the amount of learning and upskilling that man does, all while being in front of the camera on his socials, truly astounds me. If you're new to the Dr. Davin Lim world, I highly recommend you go and spiral down the rabbit hole by searching for him on all of the social media channels at Dr. Davin Lim, and let us know your thought on today's conversation while you're there by tagging us while you're listening at Beauté Industry. And hey, if you want to go that step further and have a chat or even feature on the podcast yourself, come and let me know by popping into my DMs at Tamara Reid Beauté. Until next time, stay connected.